Assalamualaikum, welcome to a brand new video. My name is Arfat. Today's video I'd like to share with you another material or another content from Bart Ehrman's famous book, The Orthodox Corruption of Scripture. Now, by far this is the most enlightening book that I've read from Professor Ehrman, and I've read a lot from Professor Ehrman. And I'm focusing here on the adoptionistic section of his book, Orthodox Corruption of Scripture, and from page 65. Now, I'll explain briefly what adoptionistic Christology is, or what adoptionism is, and why did later Proto-Orthodox scribe came to change the scripture to counter the adoptionistic claim, or the adoptionistic original passage, quote unquote, original passage that is found in the Gospel of Luke and Matthew. Now, before I begin reading this material, let me just briefly explain what adoptionistic Christology is, or what adoptionism really is, and its relationship, and who were the early proponents of this view, and why was it condemned as heretical by Proto-Orthodox theologian and scribes. Why did scribe even change? Did scribe change, or did scribe revert it back to the original? We will discuss, try to tackle this issue in this video, inshallah ta'ala. Now, what is adoptionism? Adoptionism basically is the view that these later adoptionistic have when they read Matthew and Luke, and in Mark as well. But mostly because Matthew, Luke, and Mark were written in different places of the Eastern Mediterranean. They were not written by the apostle and the evangelists, as well as the disciples of the apostle. Meaning they were not written in Palestine. They were not written. They were written in, according to traditions, they were written all over the Eastern Mediterranean. Mark was believed to have been written in Rome. Matthew could have been written in and around Judea, probably in Syria, for example, Damascus, for example. Luke was probably written somewhere in Asia Minor, and then the Gospel of John, mostly the opinion of scholars like Lehman Brown is that Gospel of John was probably written in Ephesus, but we will not focus on John here because this passage is focusing more on Matthew and Luke. So what is adoptionistic Christology, or what is adoptionism? Adoptionism is the view whereby at Jesus' baptism, or at his resurrection, then only he became the Son of God. Then only he was considered the Son of God. Now, the problem that Proto-Orthodox scribes have with this, or later on Proto-Orthodox theologian, or whoever that changes the text, okay, we can safely say that they are from the Proto-Orthodox camp, because it is them who, after the advent of 381 in Constantinople, they are the one who actually rule. They became the dominant view, and because they gained support from the Emperor Theodosius, and so who himself was a Sabelist, by the way. And so Proto-Orthodox basically became the dominant force, and they were known Orthodox as the Orthodox later on. But basically the Proto-Orthodox scribes, they changed the text so that they can counter the adoptionistic view that is found in the writings, and the early writings, or even possibly the original writings. Now, we do not know if the adoptionistic view as proposed by Matthew and Luke is actually the original reading. It could have been the original reading, and it could not have been the original reading. There is no way for us to know, because we do not have the original copy, or the copy of the original copy. Even if we have the copy of the original copy, how do we know that it has not been copied properly, or it has been copied properly? We do not know. So basically we cannot continue um, giving conclusions or any sort of response when we do not have the evidence in the first place. All this lies in the field of hypothesis, and this is not my this is not the video for me to discuss something that we do not have evidence for. Um, and so, what we do have evidence for is that scribes later change the text to meet their own theology. Then this is mostly the Proto-Orthodox theology, which became the dominant force towards the end of the 4th century. And so, as I've told you earlier, the adoptionistic Christology is that at Jesus' baptism, he was adopted to become the Son of God. Okay, because there is earlier passage in Luke that says that at his baptism, John the Baptist, after baptizing Jesus, the best attested to manuscripts in Luke reads that today I have begotten you. Okay, a voice came up from heaven and said that today I have begotten you. But later scribes changed the text to make it more in sync with Matthew and Mark, and says that a voice from heavens or the cloud from heavens opened up, and a voice came and said, you are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And so, as you can see, if you contrast between the two readings, if you look at the New Testament today that we have, the reading across the Synoptic Gospel is, you are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. But Professor Ehrman, in his book, and I think I've discussed this in my other videos about the orthodox corruption of Scripture, that basically Ehrman argues that the best attested to reading is actually the original reading, and that reading is not found in the New Testament today. And so that is why in my previous videos about the orthodox corruption of Scripture, I kept on insisting on the fact that the New Testament remains to be corrupted, because the original passage or the best attested to passage have not been restored. And even if it has been restored, we still do not know, because we do not have the original manuscripts or any early copies of the 1st century. We do not have them. Not that it will make any difference, because unless we have the original or a facsimile copy of it, but again, this sort of thing doesn't exist in the 1st century, 2nd century of the Common Era. There were no fax machine or photocopying machine and things like that. And so that is, in a nutshell, the adoptionistic view. And if you read the New Testament today, Luke, the passage in Luke, that a lot of the early church fathers, the authority and the ones that are the best attested to manuscripts, do not actually read, you are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. But that is the reading that you find in the New Testament today, for some reason. But again, it is not the point of this video to talk about that passage, because I've spoken about that in the past. So anyway, this is page 65 from the Orthodox Corruption of Scripture. Now, Joseph is called Jesus' father twice in Luke's birth narrative, okay, which is in chapter 2, verse 33 and verse 48. In both instances, scribes have modified the text to eliminate what must have appeared incongruous with the firmly entrenched notion that although Joseph was Mary's betrothed, he was not the father of Jesus. Thus, Luke 2:33 states that Jesus' father and mother began to marvel, okay, at the things being said about him. The majority of Greek manuscripts, however, along with a number of Old Latin, Syriac, and Coptic witnesses, have changed the text to read Joseph and his mother began to marvel. The change makes perfect sense, given the Orthodox view that Joseph was in fact not Jesus' father. there can be little doubt that in this case the majority text represents a corruption rather than the original reading. A wide range of early and superior manuscripts consistently give the reading that is also more difficult. The wide attestation of the variant reading and the confluence of ancient versions in its support, however, do not show that the text have been changed relatively early in the history of its transmission, at least in the 3rd century and more likely in the 2nd, precisely during the time of the adoptionist controversies. Okay? Now, this widespread evidence of corruption contrasts with the other instance in which Joseph is called Jesus' father in Luke's birth narrative. In Luke chapter 2 verse 48, Jesus' mother finds him in the temple and upbraids him by saying, "Look, your father and I have been grieved, searching for you." Once again, the text has been changed, but this time in no consistent pattern of variation. One important but fragmentary Greek witness of the 5th century and 2 old Latin manuscripts read, "Your relatives and I have been grieved." Okay? While a number of ancient versional witnesses read simply, "We have been grieved." Here again, the character of the attestation, the combination of an Alexandrian witness with Old Latin and Syriac texts, shows that the reading had already suffered corruption during the period of our concern. Yet interestingly, the change was not adopted by the majority of manuscripts that evidence corruptions in verse 33. Okay. Now, I encourage you to continue reading. Very enlightening discussion. I've read the book 3 times now. This is my 4th time rereading it. This is a very fantastic discussion. Read the footnotes as well, even though a lot of people do not like that. But read the footnotes. It is absolutely, it gives you a background context as to why he thinks this way. And on certain passages, he disagree with Raymond Brown, and things like that. And so read his footnotes. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, just a brief discussion of this passage in case you do not get what is being said here. Now, Joseph wasn't Jesus' father. And so when later on scribes do their best, Proto-Orthodox scribes do their best to make sure that there is no ambiguity in the reading. And so they eliminate the word that your father and I, okay, what is the word they say? Look, your father and I have been grieved, right? And so when the text says that your father and I have been grieved, Proto-Orthodox find problem with this passage because they know they are very sure and they are very certain that Joseph wasn't the father of Jesus. And so in order to prevent any ambiguity in the text, they altered the text to say that we have been grieved. Okay? And so they make all these sort of changes because for whatever theological reason they want to make. Now, a lot of people will justify this and say that, oh, this is actually making the words of God clearer. This is just so that people do not misunderstand the word and things like that. Now, they would draw parallels to the translation of the Quran because many translations of the Quran, they differ. The translation of the Quran differ. But that is the translation we are talking about because certain words can be used to replace another words. Synonyms can be used and things like that. But this is translations. Translations are interpretations. This is not deliberate changes. This is not even the same thing. This is a completely different ballpark. This is not even the same thing that we are discussing about. What we are discussing here is that scribes in the 2nd and 3rd century, they changed the manuscripts when they were copying the manuscripts, they changed the text of the manuscripts. Okay, they changed the text of the manuscripts so that the people that came after them would read the change, okay, the change text, and then if they follow the Jews, they will probably destroy the old manuscripts, because that is the copying practices of the Jews. The Jewish scribes, they would destroy the old manuscripts, and so but we are not certain whether Christians actually change the scribes of the manuscripts. But anyway, that's it for me today. A very short video, but a very interesting book to read. Again, I could not recommend this enough, and I'm sure a lot of people would recommend this as well. Now, this book have received a lot of criticism over the years, and a lot of refutations have been written, and I've read a few of those refutations, but mostly they have not properly present Ehrman's argument in a very meaning they similar to his other work, Forgery and Counter Forgery. They have misrepresented what he actually says, and they have not really addressed his argument. And so even works from like evangelical scholars, I'll not mention names, who have produced books, who make a blunder in his forward and say that even in the worst Greek manuscripts that we have, we still have we can still make the original, but the fact is we do not have the original. So how do we even know what the original really is? And so this is a wild claim, and I'm quite surprised to hear this from a very, very respected textual scholar. Anyway, that's it. My name is Arfat. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.